Hi everyone, my name is Eziz Ashyr. In this presentation, we will talk about evolution of monetary system through the flexible rate regime. The history of money it consists of five parts: bimetallism, classic gold standard, interwar period, Bretton Woods system, and the flexible exchange rate regime. Bimetallism before 1875. There have been and are changes in human life in every field from past to present. In the past, people lived as small societies and were content with only what they produced, and the products transactions between them were done through the barter. As human needs increased, they began to use a measure of value to buy goods from one another, and these were gold and silver. The period when people used gold and silver in the past is called bimetallism. This process ended in various years of history in countries around the world. For example, this process continued in England until 1870s, in France until 1878, and in United States until 1873. Gresham's Law. Gresham's Law proposed with the idea of bad money drives out the good is named after Sir Thomas Gresham, a leading British business player and financial advisor to Queen Elizabeth I. So what is the Gresham's law? The exchange rate between the two metals was officially fixed, and coins in abundance were used in circulation, and coins in small quantities were removed from circulation. In other words, the large amount of metal money took out the small amount of money. It drives out the bad money and the good money. Classic gold standard 1875 to 1914. The period between 1875 and 1914 was a very special period of history in which technological development continued to increase productivity and the standard of living increased. With almost no inflation for the gold standard, a harmless deflation rate, unemployment in advanced economies, and no increase. This period is also considered the first period of globalization and has many characteristic similarities with the second period of globalization that began with the end of the Cold War. In fact, in some countries the gold standard had existed since long before 1870s. For example, in England 1770, Netherlands 1880. But it was only after 1870 that many countries suddenly joined them, and the Gold Club gained its distinctive character then. Germany and Japan joined in 1871, France and Spain in 1876, Austria in 1879, Argentina in 1881, Russia in 1893, and India in 1898. During the gold standard period, foreign exchange transactions between countries were determined by the gold content of each country. Interwar period from 1915 to 1944. During the First World War, economic difficulties were experienced in the countries of the world, and embargoes were imposed in the export of gold from the countries. Post-war countries experienced hyperinflation. Countries such as Germany, Austria, Russia, and Poland. After the war, major countries around the world began to recover. The financial sovereign power that had been in the hands of Great Britain was now in the hands of the United States, and it sought to restore the gold standard. The United States was able to lift restrictions on gold exports and return to the gold standard in 1990. Countries such as Great Britain, Switzerland, France, and Scandinavian countries reinstated the gold standard in 1928. Major countries have followed a policy of sterilization of gold by prioritizing the stability of their domestic economy and then matching the inflows and outflows of gold with the decreases and increase in the domestic currency. With the Great Depression in 1929, it became impossible to maintain the gold standard in countries. In September 1931, Great Britain stopped commercial transactions between countries with the gold and started using the pound. In addition to Great Britain, countries such as Canada, Sweden, Japan, and Austria also abandoned the gold standard. Bretton Woods system from 1945 to 1972. Bretton Woods system is an economic system that was put into practice with the Bretton Woods Agreement, which was signed at the financial conference held by the United Nations in the United States in 1944. The economic system, which was declared for the purposes of ensuring economic stability and regulating the monetary cycle, determined the rules to be followed in bilateral commercial relations between countries. At this conference, attended by 44 countries, it was decided to establish the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, and these institutions started their activities in 1946. What is the Bretton Woods system? Bretton Woods system it is an economic system that was put forward and accepted at a conference organized by the United Nations during the years of the World War II. This economic system, introduced by American economist Harry Dexter White in order to determine the rules of commercial and financial relations between states, aims to ensure economic stability all over the world. All countries that joined the treaty and accepted this system accepted that their currencies were convertible into gold, and the value of each country's local currency was determined according to the dollar. In this way, the dollar was accepted as the only currency that could be converted into gold, and it became the reserve currency. In this system, the dollar became the key currency of the whole world, and all other countries began to calculate the value of their local currencies according to the dollar. The flexible exchange rate regime, 1972 to present. This system was established by the meeting of IMF members in Jamaica after the Bretton Woods system in January 1976. Jamaica Agreement. Flexible exchange rates were declared acceptable by IMF members, and banks were allowed to intervene in foreign exchange markets to eliminate the problems. Gold was officially abandoned as an international reserve asset. Half of the IMF's gold assets were given back to its members. The remaining half was sold and the proceeds were used to aid poor countries. Finally, a greater access was given to IMF funds, non-oil exporting countries and undeveloped countries. Law occurred. In the following years, the IMF continued to assist countries experiencing balance of payments difficulties. After the 1980s presidential elections in the United States, the growth rate of the US started. High real interest rates largely led to capital inflows to the United States. The demand for dollars increased, and the value of the dollar increased. The value of the dollar reached its peak in 1985, and then there was a downward trend until the until the dollar stabilized. The fall of the dollar caused negativities in the government in September 1985. G5 countries gathered at the Plaza Hotel in New York. An agreement was made, which went down in history as the Plaza Agreement. After this meeting, the dollar began to lose even more value. Afterwards, G7 countries met in Paris in 1987 to resolve these negativities. The G7 countries would cooperate The G7 countries would cooperate to achieve greater exchange rate stability. The G7 countries agreed to more closely consult and coordinate their macroeconomic policies.